New report has shown that the black middle class in the country is growing, but finances are a major source of stress. This is according to the UCT Liberty Institute of Strategic Marketing, which has released a black middle class report 2022. The study shows a maturation of black middle class over the last 15 years and has found that this segment now has a concerted focus on creating generational wealth.
The Institute has been studying the black middle class for nearly 20 years, and it seems this is a group that remains largely misunderstood.
One thing that the study highlighted quite nicely is how the makeup of the middle class in itself has evolved over the past 30 years. And that in itself is seeing not only black middle class emerging, but first and second wave middle class making up that space and really starting to shape of what it means to be middle class in South Africa.
If you look at the research and the theory over the last, half a century, there's income-based definitions, there are non-income-based definitions based on lifestyle indicators, et cetera, and social class. And so, for us as a country, grappling with what is the middle class, that is a big question. And I think what you'll find as you read about the middle class in South Africa is you almost need to look at how is this particular article or writer or even speaker defining middle class. And what you might find, especially in a country as unequal as South Africa, is, the middle class that we talk about in our study from a marketing perspective and as a consumer class is certainly not near the middle. The income distribution in South Africa, the middle of the middle class is still very poor. And obviously, as a country, we need to continue to address that.
According to the report, there are 3.4 million black middle class people, making up about 7% of the black African population, with a spending power of 400 billion rands.
So in your lower middle class status, there's still a lot of financial strain that we're seeing in the household. And it is a segment that's still quite well defined by black tax or black responsibility, whichever term you want to use. And that really becomes a defining way in which people make a lot of household decisions. What I invest in, who I invest in, what money I spend on what is really a big debate. And what we're seeing from the research is that a lot of people are still dealing with a lot of financial strain. It becomes the narrative of many black middle class households.
The report also found that there's also significant shift around asset catch-up within this group.
In kind of contrast to the white middle class, where households would inherit cars, they would inherit houses from family members, and there was generational wealth. There was this asset catch-up that happened, and it was very much viewed as a consumer class. That shift has been quite dramatic. The narrative around wanting to build generational wealth, very much there.
Although the black middle class showed incredible resilience during COVID, but the recent economic turmoil will impact this group the most, eating into their disposable income.
Every time the interest rates are going up, it's a real impact to the middle class. With, I think, a minimum of around 60% of our disposable income going towards servicing our debt obligations. So it's really critical just in terms of trying to balance those two things out. What COVID has done, and to the point you've just raised, is that it's woken people up to that reality. We saw people mentioning, they'd really not want to find themselves in another recession without some savings or something of a landing pad on. And it's really waking us up to how we spend and what we spend on. So even if we are using credit cards now, it's going to be much more around investing and seeing how money can work for you as compared to splurging and enjoying on luxuries, which might not give a return to the household in the long run.
The world of middle class discussion is quite ambiguous, but in South Africa, I think it's also important to understand that the notion that, oh, well, once households start moving into the middle class, they start acting the same and living the same. There's elements of that that's true. So if you walk in Pick and Pay, black middle class basket, white middle class basket might look very similar. So, there's certain aspects where one can say, well, there is, possibly elements of convergence. But the black middle class in South Africa, as Zandile mentioned, is definitely has less wealth behind their name, and that carries a lot of implications, is much younger, which also makes a huge difference, and is also, in general, supporting more family members.
The report also found that this group has realized that it cannot depend on one source of income. It found that respondents were most likely to have a side hustle in order to supplement their income. Diabo Seto, SABC News, Johannesburg.